the more we do this work, the more we realize what we don't know. And I think wisdom is actually knowing what you don't know too, and to go to the people who might, or even to be able to have the ability to say, I don't know. Because I think wisdom is knowing what you don't know and deferring to the people who do.
Welcome to Unlikely Gifts, a podcast for anyone looking for hope amid difficult circumstances. Life can be beautiful, unexpected, and at times profoundly difficult. It helps to hear from others who have grown from life's challenges and joys. That's why Leonard Mbonani and Cynthia Bauer are sharing how their experiences working with families impacted by disabilities in Africa have taught them about life's most amazing gifts and its hardest tragedies. These are Unlikely Gifts.
Well, hello. Welcome back to Unlikely Gifts. I'm Frank Boswell, and I'm joined by Cynthia Bauer and Leonard Mbonani, the co-founders and directors of Kupenda for the Children. Kupenda means love. It's a Swahili word, and the organization exists to replace harmful beliefs that surround disability with beliefs that improve lives. So Cindy and Leonard, welcome. It's always good to see you guys. Since we last spoke a couple of months ago, Leonard got to come and visit the United States, and I'm always curious about, well, things look from your vantage point. How did your trip go?
My trip to the US was fine. We had a safe travel all the way from Kenya to the US. We were two of us, me and my daughter, Lucky Mahenzo. We were received in Boston, and everything had been put in a place to where we are going to stay, and all the programs, events had already been placed. People had been informed, and yes, we had a smooth stay, and I think almost 99% of the activities that Cindy and our colleagues in the USS had planned for, we were able to execute them.
And Mahenza's been with you before. I've met her. What stands out for you when you come here? How does it put you on the spot a little bit, but how does America, what stands out for you?
Well, as usual, when I get to US, there are some things that always really impress me. And it's always how the roads are made and how every place is connected with roads. And then I look at how you really preserve your trees, so many trees. And yes, I really loved when I got an opportunity to go to the woods in Maine. That's something I'll never forget. Yeah,
Wow.
I really like the trees, and yeah, and even the other thing that I really like, and maybe this time round, is because we came a little bit early, but I really like the US when it's time, when it's getting warm and the trees are back to life. It really impresses me to see those trees flowering, green leaves, and so on. Yeah, but basically the whole trip was quite okay. We were able to sit with the Cindy. We were able to do quite a lot as far as the strategic plan is concerned. And I feel like, oh, a big chunk of the work was well done while we were in the US.
Well,
But
I lived
Leonard,
in,
You should say the other part of the US that you think about too. It doesn't have he doesn't have only positive. I think he's trying to be nice.
of course he is.
Well, I think this is the difference between developing world, like in Africa, Kenya in particular, compared to the US. Yes, even at a time when America is going through a lot of challenges, I still believe Americans are far much better in terms of their yeah life, in terms of what they have to their exposure. However, I still believe that yes, America, people are still living in isolation. Yeah, you don't see that socialization that we have in Africa. So I would be wondering, like I could see, and I'm mentioning Cindy because that's what I observed, seeing her all alone in her house, and the other side is seeing her mom all alone. It is unacceptable to see the age of sin or of her mother staying alone in Kenya. She would always be surrounded by grandchildren, the sons and daughters. So she's within the midst. So I think that is where there is a lot of disconnect. But I think there's also one thing that I may say is because everyone in the US, or if not all, but a big number are empowered. You know, when you are able to meet your needs, then you can stand on your own. Here, we still depend on each other. So I may not have, but my colleague has something and we are going to share. And that is how life is up to now.
Well, those are wise words. I think that's a very astute and hear that from a lot of people. So that's the downside. But well, that's a good launch place here for just talking about wisdom. That's our topic for today. Uh, I don't have the sense that wisdom is top of mind for very many people. We're all about expertise, technical stuff. There's millions of books and how to do this and how to do that, but not so much on wisdom. And it's kind of different. It might take a minute just to, especially for our listeners, to kind of understand what it is we're trying to get at with this idea of wisdom. But the Bible and ancient literature made a huge deal out of it. They thought wisdom was really the key to life. And I think of the book of Proverbs is the quintessential book of wisdom in the Bible. And it says that blessed is the person who finds wisdom. It's more profitable than silver, more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with wisdom. Better than stocks on the stock market. I mean, calls it a tree of life. So that's pretty extraordinary. And I just kind of think it's interesting that the way that Kupenda got started kind of had to do in a way with wisdom. Do you mind sharing that story about the elephant shrew?
Sure. So Kupenda started for a lot of reasons, but the really big thing that happened was when I was doing research on the coast of Kenya for my master's degree in wildlife biology, and my study was on an animal called the golden rumped elephant shrew. It's about the size of a rabbit, a small rabbit. It only exists in this one place in Kenya.
And
And
why? What drew you to that? There's a lot of
yeah,
animals
it
in the
is
world.
crazy, isn't it? So, I really wanted to study a globally endangered animal and look at the impact of human and animal interaction, mammals, and looking at, how poverty came into play as well. And so my study, for those of you who are interested, was looking at the commercial and subsistence practices on the forest and how it impacted the elephant shrew as an indicator species of the forest. Because
Wow.
what's happening in that forest, and unfortunately, since the time I did my research, I think almost all the mahogany trees are gone, um, because they take the mahogany trees, which are these really big trees for the carving industry, for tourism. And so we were looking at the impact of people taking those trees versus people coming into this protected forest to take small trees to build their huts. And what we showed in the end is that subsistence harvest of the forest doesn't have that much of an impact. It's the commercial harvest. But of course, the forest guards there let the people in that are doing commercial harvest and seem to arrest the people coming in for the small trees that are doing stuff for subsistence farming, which makes sense because you want to do what's going to be financially supportive.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very
and
correct.
so every day on my way to the forest, and so I think I'd mentioned in some other podcasts, the year before I'd been in Kenya in Nairobi, the city, and I'd seen people on the streets begging who had disabilities, including a man that had a missing arm like mine. And it made me wonder what could be done. And I prayed a lot over the year between like, I feel like I want to do something, but I don't know how. And I think a lot of people might feel that way when they're trying to seek wisdom on what should they do to fulfill what they feel God's calling them to, but they can't really figure out like what that next step is. And so when I was going to the forest one of the first days, I noticed there was a school that had started for children with disabilities. And I asked my field assistant if I could visit because that seemed like maybe that could be an interesting thing to see. My field assistant, Willie, happened to be cousins with Leonard, who had started that school. And I met Leonard and 15 kids with a variety of disabilities who were meeting in basically a storage unit at the school, and a few kids that weren't able to go to school at all. And I started getting their pictures and information and getting some people to help fund their school fees. And that's where Kupenda actually started. But the thing that's really funny is people know in Kenya, the elephant shrew is this, they know that the elephant shrew is how I came to come to Kenya and do the stuff that we do. But the thing that's interesting is the elephant shrew, also called the fugu in Kenya, is considered a foolish animal. And Leonard, why don't you say more about that? Because that's a local thing.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Uh, Thank you so much. While Cindy came to Kenya just to study this tiny animal called the elephant shrew, or the fugu in our local language, I also have a history about the fugu. When I was young, this is the animal I used to trap. And I remember I caught several in my childhood in the Arabuko Sokoke forest where Cindy was studying this elephant shrew. Even after trapping it, getting it, I did not really like to eat it just because people were really associating this animal with the foolishness, because all the time it keeps on forgetting things. You can try to make it move faster because you are trying to ambush it, but it will run so fast. But within a short time, it will just stop and start walking very slowly. So we say it's forgetful. And if you eat that meat of the elephant or the elephant shrew, you are likely to be forgetful like that animal. But the most interesting thing that I did not really know is that later it is this same tiny animal, which we say is a foolish animal, that will make Uhenza and Kupenda to be existing today. I want to say I have a lot of respect for that tiny animal, because were it not for it, I don't think Cindy would have come to Kenya. She might have gone to another place where the elephant shrew is. But here she came to Kenya, and it's because it was here. Above all, it also teaches me something related to what we are talking about today, wisdom. This is an animal, it's a creature made by God. So I can say whatever God created has its own importance. And what God created, to me, I want to say God has a lot of wisdom. Because had he not created this animal, I don't think we could have connected with Cindy. And I don't think Kupenda Kuhenza would hear. So God's wisdom, no one should challenge it. Whatever he made, that was out of his wisdom.
Well, so you're describing this much higher wisdom that's beyond all of us and wants to bring you two together and uses this animal that's renowned for foolishness. Well, that's a great, great story. What were you going to say, Cindy?
I often think of this particular passage in scripture when it comes to the elephant shrew. When Jesus is talking to his disciples about paying taxes to Caesar, I think, and the disciples, and Jesus, instead of just like pulling a coin out of his pocket, he tells one of the disciples to go get a fish, and then he takes the fish and pulls a coin out of its mouth instead of just answering straightforwardly. So I think it's kind of um, interesting. Like the elephant shrew would be a way that he would start an or a work for um, kids with disabilities, of all things.
Yeah.
And that's
Well,
why
that,
in the office that we first had, we had the elephant shrew, and we had something that said, the wisdom of God is the foolishness of man. And I thought that was, I know I'm quoting it not 100%
And I
correctly,
and
but
I
it's
think
about that.
I'll have to bring those words to our office, because They
Yeah.
are very key and they connect us to how we came to start as an organization. So we should always refer to those words. So
Hmm.
I'll make sure there's a place in our office where those words are so legible, people can read and ask questions. Why this thing? Why you put this elephant picture of the elephant shoe? Then you can start the story from there.
Well, wisdom then is not, you talk about the foolishness of mankind and all of that. So wisdom isn't about following the crowd. It's about sort of hearing a voice or being led by a wisdom above the crowd. And Kupenda exists to challenge some cultural attitudes that are foolish. But you're bringing a wisdom to bear on that, it seems to me. And you're actually bringing about some cultural change, that's a big deal. That's not an easy thing to do. Do you mind elaborating just briefly on that again? And
Yeah, I think that's very fitting in terms of, thinking about this animal that brought us to it. But often people think that you see somebody with a disability, especially one where perhaps the person can't communicate in the way we expect, or they don't behave in the way that we expect them to. And people think of them as foolish, right? But when you get to know them and you find ways to like communicate, you might actually find some of the people behind what seems to be foolish are quite wise. And some of the most wise people I've ever known. They have insights beyond what I think a lot of people have. I often talk about the blessing I've had to work with people with disabilities in Africa, um, because I feel like, and part of the reason for this is we learn so much from them. We've learned so much from some of the kids, as we've mentioned in some of the stories, and like how they endure suffering, how they appreciate things that maybe we hadn't seen, and some of their insights. And I think Leonard probably has more stories of the kids themselves. He gets the chance to be with them much, much more than I ever do.
For me, I want to say that yes, many a times when we see children with disabilities or even their parents struggling to take care of their children, we have always been thinking that maybe these people are not being wise. Like when we see these children trapped in their bodies trapped by the disability, we always think they have nothing to offer or they are not wise, they don't have any information. However, by interacting with these people, giving them the opportunity, this is when you realize that they have a lot of potentials. So like what Cindy is saying, I can really remember some of the children I've interacted with. At first, you may think, oh, there is nothing coming out of this child. But indeed, some of them, to me, have come to realize that their reasoning capacity could be higher than even people who are said to be having no disability. And I want to look like someone like Stephen Kitsao. When someone sees Stephen Kitsao, he may think, oh, there's nothing coming out of Stephen. But truly give him an opportunity and hear his voice and how he articulates issues. That's when you realize, yes, Stephen is full of knowledge and wisdom. Even at this time when he's trying to handle a case of how his father was killed, still there is a lot of wisdom in how he's handling that case. I have interacted with him, even if when he has a challenge at the university, the way he approaches me, yeah, you realize, oh, this gentleman has a lot of wisdom. So I think what I want to learn from the whole thing is that let us not underrate anybody. Let us not feel that this person, because of having a disability, has no wisdom or has no knowledge. No, that's not the right thing. Let's give them the opportunity and you will see what is coming out of these people.
hmm. So the foolishness of the world discounts people with disabilities, when in fact, the world is too foolish to understand the wisdom that they have to offer. There's a lot of paradox in that. And then Kupenda exists to change some of those cultural attitudes. How do you bring wisdom to bear on that? How do you get people to change their perspective on those who have disabilities?
Well, a lot of the problem that exists, and historically, I think it's been the case, is a lot of the people who are the problem are also the people who can be the solution, which are the people who most influence thinking and influence how people believe in the community, which, of course, in Kenya are the pastors in the church. And so often the church, more people that more churches than people would think from a Western context believe that disability is the result of a curse are the result of witchcraft, or that if only the people had enough faith, then the child would be healed from their disability. And so we learned about this, and we probably mentioned this before, when I was in Kenya a while back, very long time ago now, when I was told I might have been killed if I had been born in Kenya because of being born without my left hand. And so we talk with the pastors. We have an actual 1 day workshop that we've developed to work with pastors to talk about what does the Bible really say about disability? Because where did it come to be that when you read stories which exist in the Bible of people who were healed, and then when we say healed in this way, we're saying as a cure, like curing their condition, whatever that might be, it came to be that there was an expectation that everyone would be healed in terms of being cured from their disability. And so we talked to them about like, okay, when you look at the Bible and you see some of these cases, are there people that weren't healed in the Bible? And there actually were. If you look at Mephibosheth, you look at even Moses and a severe speech impediment, so strong that his brother had to speak for him, and Moses tried to use it as an excuse not to do what God had called him to do. And so we have long conversations about what the Bible calls us to. We look at the parable of the great banquet in Luke 14, where he says, go out into the streets and alleys and country roads and bring in the blind, the lame, the poor, the crippled. And the thing that's really amazing to see is the very people who once told mothers that it was their fault their child was disabled because of their sin are now the very ones who are bringing those mothers and those children into the church, putting them into support groups, providing emotional, spiritual counseling, as well as connecting them to appropriate services. So I think it's really beautiful to see like we're helping them to see what is like the full picture of the Bible. Because I think too often, I think I just read a statistic and I don't know where it was, so who knows what's right anymore. But it said something about in the United States anyway, like 75% of Christians have actually never read the whole Bible. And I was like, that's interesting. And you think about that, right? A lot of people are saying this is what they build their whole life around, but haven't even really looked at the whole book, the context of what's in it. And so we're pointing out that the Bible says more than healing is a cure. We also talk about when we think about the kids that we work with, we'll say a child that has cerebral palsy and has no speech and is in a wheelchair. That child who was once shunned, possibly abused, had their skin cut to let the demons out, because sometimes they believe in demon possession around that. That child now, because of the work we've been able to do, because pastors or other community leaders have come and explained to them what the real cause of their disability was, and that God loves them, that they're made in the image of God, like anybody else, and they actually are are connected to school, medical services, and most of all connected to the community and understanding love for themselves, one another, and the love of God that they have. The amazing transformation that happens not just in the child, but in their entire family and the community around them, to me, is a much bigger example of healing than if they should get up out of their wheelchairs and walk. Because it's not just about a one-off cure, it's about a whole community of transformation and love and inclusion.
So God takes the foolish things of the world and uses it to shame the wise. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and transform entire communities through these kids.
So I've always been intrigued that Timothy apparently had some problems with his stomach, and Paul told him to take some wine. He didn't tell him to get healed. He gave him some medicinal advice to deal
Mhm,
with this pesky problem. And Paul himself, prayed for healing for his eyes. He had some kind of
mhm,
problem, and they called a thorn in the flesh. And 3 times God said no. He had another
mhm.
purpose, a greater wisdom in play.
Yeah.
So Kupenda is bringing this wisdom to bear. I just wonder can you see ways that your approach is really unique? What are some ways that you think wisdom makes Kupenda really distinctive and effective?
Yeah, I think what it looks to be very unique about our work is that yeah, one thing most of the people we talk to are adults. They are people who have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, but at any given point, we do not criticize them. We always handle them in a way that is always a discussion, a dialogue, and there is no judgment. So as they discuss in the long run, you will find that they arrive at what we were intending to achieve. So no one is criticized, no one is blamed for whatever he says, but we are there only to lead them. And I think this is what has really made our workshops to be so unique in the sense that we are not there like a facilitate, somebody lecturing. No, we are there to take this discussion to come up to, so people can be very free to give their ideas. And I think sometimes, like for me, when I'm doing a facilitation and particularly the pastor's workshop, at some point someone makes a comment, "Are you a pastor?" And I tell them, "No, I'm not a pastor. But how come are you doing this work so well?" I will just tell them, "Look here, it's because I don't find it good for me to come in front of you and show that I have a lot of knowledge. We shall be discussing, and I'll just be pointing out a few things that are leading to where I want us to go. And the answers are always coming from you people. For example, when we are talking about the healing and the suffering. Yeah, this is something that I've realized that you could really handle the pastors to a point that it's something that he has read for many, many years as a pastor reading the Bible, but he has not thought it on those lines. And they say, "Oh no, this is something I never thought about. You are now bringing a new version of the whole thing. And this looks very interesting." Now, as what Cindy is saying, last week we were in Eldoret, and I remember we were surrounded by almost five professors. And I felt like, what? Uh-huh. How am I going to convince these guys with a lot of knowledge, professors? But when I was given the opportunity and I felt like, okay, this is the time I really get a lot of confidence when I'm on the platform. And I was able to articulate what we do to a point that, oh, Leonard, what is this you are doing? Why haven't we not done this before? Why is it that you have really, your approach is so good, working with the communities? This is excellent. No, I think we need to borrow what you do. And I was wondering, hey, come on, here professors borrowing this information from a layman like me. What is so unique about it? But I think is the mastery that we have come up to, we have in terms of facilitating, talking to people, and making sure we give them the respect, we don't hurt them, but still they get to where we want to be. And I think that has given us a lot of credit as young as we are, with our simple education levels. But I think experience is the best teacher because when you stand there, you are always talking from experience. This gentleman or whoever is a professor is talking from the books he has read, and there's a disconnect, and he feels like, oh, come on, you are doing it better than me.
There's a phrase in Proverbs says, "He who wins souls is wise." And I love the way you articulated that. So a lot of the wisdom here has to be with the people that you're dealing with and how to win them over without offending them. It's very easy to offend, and you don't come as the expert, but as
No.
humble learners. You've learned yourself. So I know Proverbs says that wisdom is not for spectators, it's for participants. It's hard fought, hard won. Are there particular lessons that you've learned the hard way over the years? Anything stand out? Oh boy, we needed to know
I think
that.
we've learned, I think we've learned a lot of things. Well, I think, we come in with our Western mentality sometimes when we're working in African countries, for example. And Leonard and I have had some discussions about things. And I was like, that is so silly. Why would we ever do something as ridiculous as pay someone just to drive a car? That's insane. I'm like, we should get everyone on the staff to have a driver's license and they can drive the car when we buy a car. And Leonard's like, I'm telling you, you will learn that you are wrong. I am. So because to us, I think that what we think of like what's practical for us in our culture is doesn't translate the same way because you're paying someone not that much money per day to drive a vehicle and there is no AAA in Kenya. So if your car breaks down, you're in the middle of nowhere. And when I say nowhere, I mean nowhere. You need someone who knows how to fix a car. Like all of us drive, but most of the people who drive don't know how to fix their own car because we expect to call someone to come help us, which is not
Amen,
the
amen to that.
case
Yep.
in Kenya. So I think that, yeah, and even I think Leonard, what he was saying shows also like people really value papers, right? Diplomas, degrees. And Leonard honestly should be given an honorary doctorate, given the success of his daughters too. Like he has a daughter who's a lawyer, another one who's on her way to be a doctor, medical doctor, highly educated. You know that the brains came from him and his wife there. But Leonard, I think his insight to things enough should give him an honorary degree because he's working with PhDs and professors often. He's been asked to come in because of our experience. But also, the real important thing that makes Kupenda different, in addition to how we work with people, is our focus is on stigma reduction. Many
Yeah.
organizations working with disabilities are working more on medical needs and those kinds of things, which is important. But for us, we're working with stigma reduction first, because in order to ensure people's needs are met, we need to actually value them as fully human beings. Like, because if you don't do, because otherwise they're just objects of charity and considered non-human. There's even, beyond the idea of thinking of people as cursed or full of sin or whatever might they think of the cause of disability. There's also other beliefs like people with disabilities are wholly innocent, like they can't do anything wrong, so they don't need to know about God or anything like that. And so like even in the church down the road from me here in Maine, like the pastor said, well, people with disabilities exist to teach us how to be compassionate, which I did not find to be a good answer, a good thought, because it's again talking about people with disabilities as if they're not human and they don't need to learn compassion like anyone else either. So these people that again people think are the objects of charity are the people who really could teach us. And I think the wisdom of Kupenda is we don't believe that they're just to be fixed. We believe that they're to be fully integrated in society like anybody else and also be pushed into leadership positions where some of our students are now teaching as their teachers. Some of them are worship leaders and deacons at their churches. They're in positions of not just participation, but in leadership because they have a lot of life lessons to teach the rest of us.
Well, that's so
Yeah.
well said.
Just
It's scary. Go ahead, Leonard.
something to add, and I want to say something related to wisdom. When we started this organization, I really benefited a lot from the wisdom that Cindy has. Because initially I thought, oh, Leonard, all my colleagues that we went to college together have all moved to take their first degrees and second degrees. And I think I can also get my first and second degree. But in that discussion with Cindy, she would always tell me, hey, Leonard, you know what? If you leave the organization, I don't think it is going to continue. Instead, it will collapse. And what will happen is that we shall have denied an opportunity to the several thousands of children who need your service. And I'm also seeing that that was a very high level of wisdom. Now, it also comes to me. Obedience is also another sign of wisdom. Because when she said that, I felt like, yes, I should take it. Her advice is very important. So I had to be obedient to whatever she was telling me. Today, I can see the fruits of that obedience and I can see the fruits of that wisdom that Cindy was telling me. I can see how many children we have now impacted within Kenya and beyond Kenya. I can also look at my staff. This stuff has really, really increased. Had I said, I want to go ahead and do my studies, that would have been very selfish, which is not wisdom again. But I want to say truly, here we are. We are serving several thousands and thousands of children with disabilities across Africa. We are also spreading this information to many, many people. And I think this is more than being that egocentric to get maybe good papers and so on. I think this is a fulfillment. I feel so much that I've done a lot instead of having taken my time to go for further studies. I see the satisfaction of the job that I'm doing today.
Following the crowd versus listening to the voice above the crowd. That's just how that hits me. It is so easy to be patronizing and condescending, isn't it? And it becomes about making ourselves virtuous rather than really helping people in a good way, a wise way. It takes wisdom to know how to do that. So you kind of described a couple of turning points. I wondered if there are any others that stand out in the history of Kupenda that, there's like a higher hand. There was a greater wisdom that was leading you. Does anything else come to mind?
I was thinking about some of the things again that we think are the right things to do that actually aren't always. We think we know best, right? A lot of
Oh,
the
I
times.
had
Yeah.
that question down. Was there a time when you were just sure you knew what to do?
Well, I remember
And
there was for sure. Well, the car thing was one of them, but I think that I'm thinking of one of our first students named Teresia, who had a tree fall on her leg, and her leg had to be amputated quite high up.
oh,
And she is now a social worker, working for the government, and we're really proud of all that she's done. But I remember there was a time we had gotten her a prosthetic leg. And keep in mind that on the coast of Kenya, it's really, really humid, right? And so from an outsider point of view, like a lot of people are like, well, she doesn't want to wear her leg. And people are kind of pushing her to wear it. And she's like, listen, the stump where the leg meets is getting so many blisters because it's so hot. And so she prefers to use crutches. And I remember coming in when someone had brought that situation up to me, and I'm like, well, I totally get it. I'm like, I grew up in a world where people were trying to push me to wear a prosthetic arm, and all I ever found with that prosthetic arm was that it got in the way of my abilities to do things. Because a prosthetic is still not you. You can't feel things with it. It's not really, it's an extension. It's like walking around with a stick, right? And I just remember, like, well, I said, she has to make her choice of what works for her in the end. Like, just because you think it looks more normal, because you think it's the right thing to push her, that's not okay. And so I think we learn from the kids to like listen to them and what works for them and their abilities. Because again, you think you know something by how it looks, but that's not actually the case. And I think it was what, Leonard, in 2006 when we had a teacher, and I know we've mentioned this story before, but we had a teacher who had HIV that was working for us, and she was told that the only way she could show she had faith that God would heal her was if she stopped taking her HIV medication. And she did, and she died. And that was actually when we first started doing work directly with pastors. And I think that was a big pivoting point where we realized, okay, in the beginning, we were just kind of operating more reactionary, where we were saying, okay, that they need a classroom built. We'll go do that. We'll go do pay for some kids. We'll do these different things. But to actually go and address the cause of the problem, which I think I often say this, so I can't remember if I've said it before in this. We talk about the parable of the Good Samaritan, right? If you go, they talk about in the scripture, Jesus talks about there's a man on the side of the road who's been beaten up, and he said, and the Samaritan man is the one who helps him, and we're supposed to do that, right? But what if we took it a step further and said, what if on the Jericho road there is another guy who was beaten up and you bind up his wounds, and another one and another one and another one? At what point do you take a pause and ask yourself, what the heck is going on the Jericho road that all these people are getting beaten up? And that's kind of what we were bandaging wounds, right? And then we
Yeah.
realized, okay, the Jericho Road of disability is belief systems around disability. And if you don't fix that, you're just going to be bandaging up people without actually going to the root cause of the problem. And
You're
I think
really
that was also the time Leonard took the big step of faith to come and work for Kupenda full time.
you're really in the wisdom business.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
this has really given me a kind of a fresh angle on what you do. Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, I think throughout the years we have worked as Kupenda Penza, there is a lot that we are learning in terms of wisdom, because all the time you are listening to parents, you are listening to the community, and listening us again is a skill and is still part of the wisdom. Because at many times, if you do not have better listening skills, you would end up differing with these communities or these people you are always talking to and listening to them. And very interesting is that whatever we hear or we learn from the people are supporting, it is helping us to have more wisdom within ourselves. Because how many people have we interacted with? But I have really learned. For example, there is an old mother who lost her grandson, Oliver. And this grandmother usually comes to my office and she could take even an hour talking to me. But I will have always given her that listening ear. But by the end of the time she's leaving, there is a lot of information and a lot of wisdom that I have learned. And I feel like, okay, so by listening to the people and taking in what they are saying, at the end, it is even increasing your level of wisdom on how you can work with people in the community and how you can even serve the community better than you used to serve them maybe 5 years ago.
Wow. Well, wisdom, the teaching of the wise, is a fountain of life. And you've described the ways that you have brought life to people and I guess villages and institutions. And it's really quite remarkable. It also seems to me there's a beauty about it. By wisdom, a house is built, says Proverbs, and through knowledge, its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures. And I think what you do is rare, and it certainly seems beautiful. Uh, are there things that come to mind when you think of beauty that you see in a new way through your work?
I think the beauty of wisdom or something, how do I say it the right way? One thing that I have learned, and I think all of us learn as we get older, I hope so. It's not true of everyone because I've listened to some people and, I think the more we do this work, the more we realize what we don't know. And I think wisdom is actually knowing what you don't know too, is to understand like I don't have all the answers and like to not even try to pretend that I have the answers when I don't. And to go to the people who might, or even to be able to have the ability to say, I don't know. Because I think wisdom is knowing what you don't know and deferring to the people who do.
Well, in the repository of much of that wisdom are the people that you work with. So I guess one of the last questions I'd like to ask you is, what's the best thing or the most valuable thing that you feel you have learned personally through interacting with these people with disabilities?
There are a number of things that I have learned, but the most outstanding, and this goes with the name of our two organizations, Kupenda and Kuhenza, where we are saying it's love. What I've really learned out of this work is love. Love is very key in all the work we are doing, because for you to serve these parents, this child, first and foremost, there should be love. And I've come to realize that sometimes when you love these children, you love these parents, you will always associate with them, and also they will also love you, and they will associate themselves with you. So it's like a two-way traffic. As I love them, they also love Leonard. As I connect with them, they always connect with me, and they will always want to know more about me and always to be very close to me. So I see like, yes, this is a two-way. And that is what I've really, really learned with these parents. Sometimes it's a challenge in the office that a parent could come and this mother would insist, I don't want to be served by anyone, but by Leonard. And he or she is insisting. But I want to say, as much as I've discouraged that, but someone feels more comfortable talking to Leonard. And it's because of this connection. It's because of welcoming them to your life. It's because of handling them as human being, giving them that love. And because it has been a long time with these people, they feel so as close to you. They feel so free to air whatever they have in their hearts to you as even opposed to another person. So that relationship, it has really touched me, and I feel that is what I have really gained out of this job that we are doing.
Yeah,
How
thanks.
different from pride and
Mhm.
expertise and the top down, I'm going to come fix you kind of thing. This is that's
Well, and
beautiful.
I think
And
that
so like Jesus, who loved hanging around, he really valued people whose lives were a mess and everybody looked down on them. And he is the embodiment of wisdom. So what you're doing in many ways reflects that, it seems to me.
yeah, and I would say what Leonard was saying is I think there's beauty in brokenness, I would say. And I
Mm.
don't know if this has come up, but Leonard officially is a person with a disability now, which he was not when we started because of his cancer diagnosis. And it's an ongoing health issue that gets in the way. So officially in Kenya, and I think in some ways it connects us more. And so I obviously started Kupenda because of my own experience being born without a hand, which was because of societal perception, it was challenging because people were always doubting my abilities and made me doubt myself. But I think that what I have learned is like all of what Kupenda really is a bunch of broken people that have come together to support one another, I think, in a
Oh
lot of
my
ways.
God.
Don't you think? And there's wisdom in sharing. I think that a lot of people think you should hide your what you might seem as flaws, as opposed to what we believe is wise is to share what most other people might think of as a flaw, like your disability, your health condition, all these things, because it actually brings more people together. And I often think of when I think of Kupenda, I think of this stained glass window, or it looks like a stained glass window of this place we used to stay in Kenya. And it was made out of broken bottles. Of broken bottles were made into a stained glass window. And I think that's what Kupenda is. All of these broken pieces coming together. When we come together, we make this amazing, beautiful mosaic of color. And I think that's really what Kupenda is in the end. Broken people supporting one another, sharing our brokenness, which makes us whole.
Yeah, Cindy, you remind me I'm not so much conversant with the Bible, but I still remember of the four lepers.
Mm-hmm.
Quite broken bodies, but what they did collectively was still is still very it's wonderful, and it's recognized, it's mentioned up to today. So I always relate to it as, oh, we are a bunch of people who are having so many challenges. But when we look at what we have done to the society and to the community, it's huge. And that really shows us that even for the children that we see with their broken bodies, there is power in them. There is power if given that opportunity. So, yeah, I think we are here a bunch of broken
Well,
people, but we are doing a lot.
and there's one figure in the Bible I don't think we've mentioned, which is strange considering we're talking about wisdom, which is Solomon, right? Who
Yeah.
asked for wisdom. And I think that's the thing you wouldn't really want to ask for. But didn't he also write Ecclesiastes and talk about once he had wisdom, he learned that life was pain. So wisdom is a burden at the same time as it is a gift.
Yeah.
Wisdom is about living in the world Ecclesiastes describes. That's a
Hmm.
fabulous book. It's misunderstood by a lot of people. Well, I can't imagine anybody listening to this not sensing that we're just descending in very, very deep and profound areas of thought and experience. This is what wisdom is, as opposed to just technical expertise. And it's beautiful. And the stories you've shared are beautiful. And I love the fact that you never quite intended to get into this. You were sort of led into it. And you've only gotten started. Only God knows at this moment what the ripples are going forward beyond your own lifetimes even. This is really a wonderful thing, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. And we'll land it for now, but we'll look forward to our next conversation soon. And in the
Thanks so much.
meantime, stay well, stay safe. God bless you and all the work that you're doing. It's beautiful.
And God bless you for all this
Thank you.
initiative.
You bet.
Bye.
Thanks.
Well, we hope you found this episode of An Unlikely Gift to be a source of hope for you as you walk through all the challenges and joys of life. If you'd like to be a part of this meaningful work that Kupenda is doing, visit our website at www.kupenda.org. That's Kupenda, Kupenda. And thanks for listening. We hope you'll join us for our next time when we explore the ever-timely topic of patience.